My wife of 14 years had a sordid affair with a young HVAC technician. I don't want to confront her and I just want to forget about it, he says. Are you kidding me? Let's get into it. And this story dates back to January of 2019. He says, I discovered recently that my wife had a brief affair with an unknown man back in early November. Since this happened over 2 months ago, and it's clear from her messages with him that she deeply regrets her actions and quickly ended the affair, I've chosen to forgive her and just let this go without confronting her. I've obviously not told anyone about this, so I came here to bounce my decision off the community. Let me explain this situation in as vague of terms as possible for confidentiality. For this posting, call me Ron, 37 years old, and my wife Cassie, 35. We've been a couple for 15 years, married for 14 years. We have 3 boys ages 13, 11, and 10. Our marriage has been a happy one with lots and lots of love and intimacy. My wife, kids, and I are a team, and I pride myself on being a strong paternal leader of my family and have been passing these traits to my boys. Well, hats off to you, OP, for doing that. We need more strong men out there raising strong men for the future. Society's been breaking down, and men have been emasculated over the last 15, 20, 25 years, and I think it's one of the biggest problems we have. So I say hats off to you for raising strong men, but I don't like how you're planning on handling this situation. That doesn't speak to strength to me, so let's continue here. He says, I work as a repair technician for a phone/internet company 15 years, and my wife is a stay-at-home mom by choice who happily runs the household. She loves to cook, garden, can, sew, clean, and decorate the house. She also homeschooled each of our boys through the 3rd grade. If you asked me last week, I'd say she was an ideal wife for a man like me, and I'd still say the same this week. So he's saying last week he felt she was ideal. And then even after finding out about her affair, he feels she's still ideal. I don't know about that guy. We really do fit together like peas and carrots, as they say. Flash ahead to last evening. My wife was out with her sister and mother, visiting a cousin who recently had a baby. I needed to check something on our home laptop that my wife uses, and long story short, when I booted it up, there was a messenger application that opened, and up came a message from her sister. Nothing out of the ordinary, just chit-chat. Looking at the messages, they were all just short back and forth messages between my wife and her sister. I was about to close out of the application when at the top of the page a message from 2 months ago from an account with 3 capital letters as the name caught my eye. Being curious, I opened the last message, which revealed the affair. These messages only extended for 5 days from their first interaction to their last. Apparently this guy has a job but also has a side business where he sells some kind of product. He met my wife somewhere and gave her a business card for his side business. And she went there on a Saturday morning while out shopping and bought something. And apparently he got something. Are you kidding me? She meets this guy, goes right over and does that to him. Oh my gosh. They met up again the following Tuesday, this time in a vehicle. And he says here, I don't know if it was hers or his. In a parking lot, somewhere right here in town. It was after this that my wife sent him a message saying it was all a mistake on her part. She told him she loves her husband and her sons and cannot see him again, and asked that he not say anything about this to anyone as it would destroy her family. The guy replied she has his promise that he wouldn't tell, but asked if they could just keep seeing each other, saying it would just be for their enjoyment, nothing more. Mister, I'm talking to this affair partner now. You're playing with fire. You never ever get involved with a married woman or for a woman with a woman who has a significant other. You just don't do that. There's too many women out there. She declined and wished him well, then asked that he just forget her. He replied back saying, okay, if that's what you really want. I'll always remember our time together and listen to what he says next, and will think about you every time I blank, and I'm sure you know what blanky means by that. That was the extent of their affair. 5 days, 7 messages, and 2 encounters with just 1 involving penetration. Op, how do you know that was the extent of their affair? How do you know they're not still carrying on today? They still could be communicating on another application. You are just naive, man. While learning this hurt me deeply and really dinged my masculinity, I've thought about it and have decided to forgive and not confront her. My reasoning is we've had 15 beautiful years together as a team that produced 3 great kids and a great family life. I think this was just the case of temporary insanity on her part, so you think, or maybe just some strange desire that she had inside her that has now been satisfied. She's never once in our 15 years neglected me, including before, during, and after her brief affair. If this is her only indiscretion, then I'm willing to swallow my pride to protect and preserve our great marriage. Oh boy, this guy, I'll tell you. So that's my tale of woe. Tell me what you think about my decision and how I'm handling this situation. Has any man out there ever encountered something like this and handled it like I planned to do? If so, how did it turn out? Thanks for any feedback you send, Ron. All right, now for a few responses from the community. The first one is from a woman. She says, no, no, no. This is not something you can overlook. Cheating is a major breach in trust, and most marriages don't survive once it happens. Those that do are never the same. My ex-husband cheated, and I tried to forgive and forget, but just couldn't. We ended up divorcing 7 months later. Best move I ever made, as I'm now happily married and have a great family. Now here's one from a guy. He says, my brother, if there's any chance for you to save this marriage, you need to confront her and both of you need to get into counseling. If she's truly remorseful and sorry, then she's probably being eaten up with guilt, and it will be a relief for her if you agree to forgive her. Even if you do, your old marriage is dead and you will need to build a new one. Good luck, my friend. And then the final one, this is from a guy and he's kind of funny here. He says, dude, check your pants as I think you may have lost your stone somewhere. If I read your story correctly, you said your wife met this guy somewhere and went right over to his house and gave him a blank, then meets with him a couple days later and has S in his car. Really confront her now. Move her out and get in touch with a lawyer pronto. So she belongs to the streets, and now for a series of updates that he gives. The first one is from just a few weeks later. He says, thanks to everyone who responded. I didn't think my story would garner so much attention. Contrary to the consensus of the community, I've decided to go with my original plan and forgive my wife and not confront her. I know many of you are going to criticize me and call me weak, but you don't know us. My wife and I are a team, and our bond is so much stronger than a single indiscretion. I believe she's learned an important lesson and realizes how valuable our relationship is. She's as affectionate now as she was when we first met. You know why? Because she's love bombing you out of guilt. He says right here, he says, I don't know if this is guilt or what, but I sure do like it. Hopefully this is my final post here. Thanks again and good luck, everyone. And now for his next update, which is the following month. He says, per my last update, I never planned on coming back on here, but something happened to me this week, and I wanted to see if anyone out there has experienced something similar. As I stated previously, my plan was to forgive and forget my wife's affair and not confront her. Things were going great for the last month. She was doing everything right, and I was completely happy. Then one day, while we were all at the table eating dinner with my boys and her parents, something snapped inside my head. It was like a light switch. My wife had just put all the food on the table, and she ended up being the one to say grace. She said a beautiful prayer thanking God for the food and for her family, but something just came over me. Suddenly, instead of the love I've had for her since the day we met, I felt a strong sense of disgust hearing her speak. I was quiet for the rest of the evening, thinking it was just something that would pass, but it hasn't. It's been 4 days now, and the feeling is getting worse. I can't stand to hear her voice, and I can't stand to be in her presence. It's driving me crazy as I love her so much, but now I just can't get the betrayal out of my head, and I just keep thinking of her having S with some phantom guy. I'm disgusted, hurt, and angry. I know that I've been bottling this up inside me, but now I can no longer contain it, and I'm worried. I think I need to speak with someone about this. I'm either going to talk to my uncle, who's been like a father to me since my dad died when I was 15, or I may break down and call the employee assistance line at our company and get some basic counseling there. I need to do something as I don't want to lose my marriage. Has anyone out there experienced this? Help, he says. And now for a few responses he got to this update. The first one's from a woman. She says, I'm a retired counselor, and let me first say your feelings are normal. As you stated, you've been bottling this up in a dark corner of your mind, and now it's moved center stage. I would suggest you meet with a counselor, confide in your uncle, then talk to your wife. You'll feel much better, and it will put you in a healthy place where you can rebuild your marriage. See, these counselors are all about rebuilding your marriage and staying with your spouse because that's what's ingrained in them. They know if they keep a couple together that they're likely going to have possibly a lifetime customer. They're in this couple because if the couple divorces, then their revenue stream as a counselor stops. So oftentimes you're going to see them say, oh, you can rebuild your marriage and it can be better than ever. In my opinion, no. The next one here, this is a response from a male. He says, talk to your uncle, then confront your wife. Skip the counselors as all they're going to do is try to convince you to stay with her. That's what happened to my brother. If I ever discovered my wife cheated, it would be over immediately. We divorced and I'd have absolutely nothing to do with her. If I cheated on her, I'd want her to do the same with me. And then finally, here's our last response here. He says, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. Cheating is the most serious breach a partner can commit. She's no longer playing on your team. She's a double agent acting like she's with you when her mind and body belong to someone else. I like that saying, she's a double agent, because that's exactly what's going on. He says, get an attorney now and start planning for divorce. Believe me, there's no coming back from something like this. I speak from experience, And now we're at a point in this video where I want to encourage you, if you're liking what you hear, hit that like button. That will move this video up on the YouTube algorithm and get it seen by people all over the planet. And now let's go on with our story. And here's the final update from like 17 months later. This is from September 29th of 2020. Let's see what's happened during that period. He says, I've come back to give everyone an update on my situation. Per my original post and updates, my wife had a brief affair in late 2018 with an unknown man. My plan was to forgive and not confront her. Then after a month, I realized I couldn't do this and started avoiding her to buy time before I decided what to do. I took on additional jobs after my normal work tour, which kept me away from home until after 8 p.m. On the weekends, I busied myself with projects and golfing with my uncle. My wife didn't pick up on anything, although she was puzzled when I refused several of her initiation attempts, as this is something I had never done before. I told her it was due to exhaustion. Then come Saturday, March 16th of 2019, a day that will live in infamy for me. My wife was out grocery shopping and something inside me, call an intuition or maybe divine intervention, told me to go check that messenger app on the laptop. When I did, I was sickened to find a new chat string between my wife and her lover that began on Thursday. In this chat, his identity was revealed. Let's find out who this guy is. The guy is the HVAC technician that came out to do our winter tune-up back in the fall. Checking the company website, his bio states he's been there for 2 years and lists his hobbies as 4: wheeling, fishing, and making metal garden art. I believe this is how they connected, as my wife has one of these metal sculptures in our backyard. Doing a quick search, I found out he's just 25, so she's going for some young hunkier. The chat was initiated by my wife. She took a screenshot of his company picture and sent him a note saying, just checking to see how you're doing, your new picture looks great. I miss you so much. This started a whole conversation where in the end they agreed to meet up in a county park near our house. He says here at the same spot they met last time, according to his message. Oh boy, in their last exchange, he states that he will expedite his second job in the morning and should arrive by 11:30 a.m., which will give them a full 90 minutes together. He told her that he will be bringing a new memory foam mattress and a pillow with him this time so they don't get bruised up like the last time. Reading this, I just about went insane with rage. Oh man, if you did raid that man, that would send me over the top. I can tell you that. The park is just 5 minutes from my house and is a place my family and I go often to walk and hike. The main parking lot is huge and has restrooms, nice restrooms. It's very popular with field workers and employees of the nearby hospital who like to eat lunch outside there or in their vehicles. Here they can stretch their legs, get fresh air, and use the bathroom before getting back to work. It's such a busy place and so near our house. I couldn't believe she'd risk meeting him there. On top of this, the lot is patrolled by county sheriff deputies who you normally see driving around at least once when you visit. Their devious plan was that he would park his van at the back of the lot facing forward, and she will park up front and then walk the trail back to the van and secretly join him. You see how much planning and calculating goes into these affairs. It's never very rarely just a spur-of-the-moment thing. These are very calculated trysts, as I always say. After reading all of this, I felt a sense of anger, rage, and hate I had never felt before. I knew if I stayed there, I would confront my wife when she got back, and I didn't want to do so in that condition. So I called my uncle. I asked if he was available as I had something to talk to him about, and he said he was. I headed over to his place where we talked out in his wood shop. On my way over, I called my wife and told her where I was going and said I'd be back in a few hours. She was fine with this as she planned on spending a few hours cleaning and doing laundry. When she told me she loved me at the end of the call, it sent a sharp chill down my spine, and it took everything I had to hold back cursing her out. I just said, love you too, bye. I met with my uncle and told him what was going on. He comforted me and encouraged me to stay calm and focused. He thought about the situation for a few minutes, then said if I planned to stay married to my wife, I should confront her today. But if I wanted to divorce, the best thing to do would be to catch her in the act. He then asked if I planned to stay married or intended to divorce. I told him initially I planned to stay married and just forget the entire thing, but now I want to divorce. He asked if I was absolutely sure, and I said that I was. I explained that I'm now at a point where I dread seeing my wife or even hearing her voice. He said he understood and would feel the same. My uncle then said he would accompany me on Tuesday for moral support to be a witness and for security purposes should things get out of hand. He also suggested we meet with the owner of the HVAC company to engage him in this matter. I was concerned about doing so as I didn't want the owner to speak with the technician before the confrontation on Tuesday. On Monday morning, my uncle set up a meeting with the HVAC owner at 3 p.m., and I joined him. Once the owner learned of the situation, he had his HR manager join the meeting. I showed them the messages and explained my plan. Both the owner and the HR manager apologized, stating these actions violated their company code of conduct, and they would both attend tomorrow as well. Normally, when HR is saying that an employee violated their company code of conduct, that means that upon investigation, if this is found out to be true, very high likelihood this guy will be fired, terminated. Tuesday came and it was really bad. I couldn't sleep at all Monday night and was so nervous I was shaking. Cassie, now that's his wife because he hasn't used her name throughout the story. I think this is the first time he's used it except when he introduced her. He says, Cassie got up a couple of times to check on me, and I told her I just had insomnia. Morning finally came and I left at my normal time for work, but instead went over to my uncle's house. I had my mom join us there, and we explained the situation to my mom and aunt. They reacted as you would expect, with a combination of shock, sadness, and anger. They were uncomfortable with my plan to surprise Cassie and her lover in the park, and instead thought I should just confront her this morning and go from there. This made me doubt my plan somewhat, but my uncle spoke up and explained why I was handling things this way. His uncle is a good sounding board and a good moral support for him. My uncle and I arrived at the plaza across the street from the parking lot for the park at 11 a.m. sharp, and the HVAC owner and HR manager arrived 5 minutes later and parked beside us. We were in my uncle's car, and the HVAC team was in the HR manager's son's car. The plaza parking lot has a clear view of the entire main lot of the park. At around 11:20 a.m., Cassie arrives and parks down near the park restrooms. She gets out, goes into the restroom, and comes out and starts walking the trail. A few minutes later, her lover arrives in his company van and parks near the end of the parking lot, not more than 150 feet from our cars. Within a few minutes, my wife appears on the passenger side and gets in. At this point, my heart is beating so fast I thought I was going to pass out. We waited a full 10 minutes, and then the four of us walked up and across the street to the van. We could see no one in the front seats, so they were in the back. We decided that the owner of the company would knock on the back door, which he did, and called out the name of the technician. We heard rustling from inside and saw the van move, but no one answered. The owner knocked again and said to the technician that he knows he's in there and has someone with him and that he needed to open the door. As he was saying this, a sheriff deputy pulled up behind the van and asked if everything was all right. I walked over and explained to the deputy that my wife was in the back of the van with the driver, and we were waiting for them to come out. I nervously told him that he may want to stick around until the situation was resolved, and he agreed. He exited his car and stood beside me. With this, the owner pulled out a second set of keys for the van and proceeded to open the door. When he turned the key and opened the door, the technician was standing right at the door and said something to the effect of, "Sorry, boss, I was just taking a quick nap on my lunch hour." The owner told him to get out of the van, which the technician did slowly. With this, the owner climbed up in and called out to my wife saying, "Ma'am, I see you there, please come out." Keep in mind that my uncle, the sheriff deputy, and I were all standing to the side, so my wife didn't know I was there. When she exited the van and caught sight of me, she immediately collapsed to the ground and started crying, saying, and he's paraphrasing here, "Oh, Ron, why are you here? I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm so sorry, Ron, please, Ron, please, Ron." When I didn't approach her on the ground, she got up and started towards me, and I stepped back telling her to please stay away. She came towards me again, and the deputy spoke up and said something like, "Ma'am, please respect his space and calm down." Cassie responded that she couldn't calm down and started crying again. She then rushed over to the grass and vomited. I wonder what she vomited considering where she just was. With this, the HR manager walked over to Cassie and was talking with her. I used this time to call my mother-in-law at her office, which happens to be less than 5 minutes from the park. I explained to her what happened and that she needed to come over to assist her daughter. She thought I was joking, but I told her unfortunately it was true. She hung up and arrived within 10 minutes. As soon as she arrived, the HVAC owner left in the company van with the technician in the passenger seat, and the HR manager left in her son's car. At this point, it was just Cassie, her mom, my uncle, and the deputy. With this, I told my uncle, "Our work is done here, uncle, let's go home." I don't know why I said this, but I think it was because I was so relieved it was over. Throughout the whole ordeal, my wife was crying uncontrollably and mumbling various things, occasionally saying something discernible, like, "I love you, Ron. I'm sorry, Ron, don't leave me here," stuff like that, but I just ignored her. I gave my mother-in-law a hug and walked away from the scene with my uncle, so he left her there with her mother. Cassie stayed at her parents' house, and I presented her with divorce papers. They're a week to the day after the incident. We were divorced 9 months later, so at the end of 20, I guess it would have been 2019, he got divorced from her. During the 9 months that I now refer to as purgatory, we agreed to keep a stable home for our kids. We each alternated weeks living at the house with them, and then living with our respective parents on the off week. So I think what he's explaining there is 1 week he'd live at the house with the kids, then he'd go stay with his mom, and then she would come over to the house and live with the kids. And then at the end of her week, she would go live with her parents, and that's how they alternated to keep a stable house for these kids. During those 9 months, Cassie begged me multiple times a day to give her another chance, offering me everything. While I was always courteous and professional at all times, my answer to every such request was met with a firm no. There was just no way. While I once loved this woman more than life itself, that's a big mistake for anybody to love somebody more than life itself. You never do that. I now feel nothing more than indifference towards her. It's strange I still feel that way today. She's still fixated on getting me back and use her entire share of our asset accounts to buy me out of our family home instead of selling it and splitting the proceeds. Her reasoning is that she feels one day we will get back together and live there again, which is never ever going to happen. Right after divorcing, I bought a small home in the country. I don't know what she's going to do to keep up the house and her car payments at the end of the year, when her alimony runs out, so even though she cheated on this guy, she's been getting alimony, it looks like, for a year. Since we split 50-50 custody, the child support is not enough to cover all of her expenses. As for me, I'm just enjoying life, spending time with my boys, and playing lots of golf with my friends and my uncle. I'm in no rush to get into another relationship anytime soon, Ron, and that's the end of his story. And let me just say to this guy, first of all, I want to go back and applaud you for doing a good job. It sounds like trying to raise your young men into being strong future leaders. I think that's very critically important. Now I also want to go back to the beginning and criticize you for attempting to rug sweep this affair and not confront your cheating wife. That is a big mistake. You never do that. You confront, you take action, and you take the appropriate steps, which to me is always, if you're married, get a divorce. If you're not married, you break up with a person, period, end of story. Now after that, I think you handled the situation appropriately. That confrontation in the park, man, that was intense, and I give you credit for keeping your cool and seeing that through to a successful end. So those are my thoughts on this story. Now, I want to hear from all of you out there. How do you think this guy handled this situation? Have you ever been in a situation like this? Tell us about it. I want to hear from you. Also, just a reminder to hit that like button, share this video with your friend, and please subscribe to this great channel, and I will talk to you on the next one.